All right, kiddos, this is your earmuffs warning. This is not an over-the-top raunchy podcast, but if you've read my books, you know I'm not afraid to use some colorful language. We might also cover some adult topics if they come up in the questions, so just be aware of that. Finally, I need to remind you that while I am a therapist, I'm not your therapist, so please don't try to use this as a substitute for professional help. Also, please don't try to sue me. Thank you. All right, what's up, ladies, gentlemen, and friends of all varieties? This is the Hardcore Self-Help Podcast, episode 10. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Duff, a clinical psychologist from Southern California and the author of the Hardcore Self-Help book series. And today I have an interview for you, which is a really, really cool one. I'm interviewing Shannon McFarlin, who is a representative from Talkspace. Now, you may have heard of Talkspace before. It's probably the most popular platform right now for receiving online therapy. And some of you guys may have heard of online therapy before. Some of you may be wondering what the heck is online therapy. So we'll talk all about that. It's basically taking the normal psychotherapy that you do with a person and taking that online. And it takes a variety of different formats, be it text or video or audio. Many people do this privately. So I myself, I have some patients that I see online instead of in person. But this is a different sort of thing where instead of a single provider, Talkspace has a whole network of providers, and it's a platform for matching you to a therapist and managing that whole thing. It's really awesome. So definitely check it out. You just can look up Talkspace on Google. I'm pretty sure it's Talkspace.com. They have an app on your phone. They have a desktop app. You can do it through their website, all sorts of things like that. But before we hop into the interview, I want to say thanks to our one reviewer this week, Tattoo Girl 101. Thank you so much for your review. It really helps out. For the rest of you, please consider dropping by and leaving a review on iTunes. It's very, very helpful. And next week will be another question and answer. So please send me your questions. You can send them to me on Twitter, at DuffThePsych on Twitter, or through email, duffthepsych@gmail.com. Send me your questions about anything. I got a few in the hopper still, but I need a little more variety because they're starting to get a little homogenous. So please send me some questions. And yeah, that's it. So let's jump into the interview with Shannon McFarlin, and I'll be back at the end to wrap up. All right, everybody. So today I have Shannon McFarlin from Talkspace on the show. And for those of you who may not be familiar, Talkspace is the, if not one of the most popular online therapy companies right now. So I wanted to have Shannon on the show to talk about, you know, what Talkspace is all about, a little bit about internet therapy in general. I do it kind of on the private side, but this is a company that manages many different therapists, and it's a platform for it. So I'm really interested to ask a bunch of questions. Shannon, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
So can you tell us just about who you are in the company, how you got involved, that sort of thing?
Sure. So I'm an eHealth clinical experience strategist and a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay. That's a big first word there.
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm a therapist and I'm based in Seattle.
Okay.
And I've been working with Talkspace for about 2 years now.
What does being your E coordinator, what was that?
eHealth clinical experience strategist.
Okay. Can you break that down a bit? What does that involve
Sure.
for you?
Sure. So what that means is that I work with Talkspace and advise their product team on the user experience between the therapist and the client, what that looks like, what it feels like, how we can optimize it to support the therapeutic goals.
Okay. So that's very cool. I think a lot of people, first reaction when they hear internet therapy, they think of it as something that's like they think of Uber for therapy or something like that, which is kind of scary. And they don't realize that there's people on the other side of it who are making sure that it's something still good and clinically sound.
That's right. That's right. So we want to ensure that it feels secure to clients and it feels like there's a real person on the other end.
Okay. So I want to learn more about that. But before, can you speak a bit about what Talkspace looks like? So if somebody was going to get therapy through Talkspace, what does it look like for them?
Sure. So they can access Talkspace via the desktop or their app. and they sign on, they create an account, and then they have their very own secure private room. And what they do is they go in there and they write, and they can write anytime that they want. And then the therapist responds to them twice a day.
Okay. So twice a day, do they set up a particular time for that, or do they just guarantee that it will be at least twice a day that they do respond?
Right. It's asynchronous messaging.
Okay.
But we also offer, we want to make sure that clients can communicate in the way that is most comfortable for them. So we offer audio. They can leave audio messages. They can leave video clips, or we can also set up times for live chat or live video.
Oh, okay. So the basic format is asynchronous, and you could use any type of medium, so video, audio, or text, and that will be asynchronous, basically like an email or a text or something like that. But you can set up synchronous exchanges where it's live as well?
Yes.
Is that something that is like an additional cost to make a synchronous appointment, or is it built into the basic package, or how does that work?
It just depends. So they can replace if they prefer to only do, say, live chat, for example, they would replace their asynchronous messaging with that for the week. So
gotcha.
Instead of writing, they could still write all week if they wanted, but we would really only talk during the time that we set.
Okay. So instead of saying I'll respond, 2 times per day, you're saying that I will do the synchronous interaction instead.
That's right.
Okay. And is that worked out between the person and the therapist, or how's that worked out?
Yeah, it's worked out between the client and the therapist.
Okay. And you're on both sides of it, right? Do you also do clinical work yourself through Talkspace, or are you just advising?
I do. I'm a therapist on Talkspace. Yeah. I have a full client load there. And so I see individuals and couples on the platform, and also mentor other therapists.
Gotcha. So what are you seeing as what do people really like about Talkspace? What are they preferring to use in terms of all those different modalities you talked about?
Most of my clients tend to really like the messaging, the asynchronous messaging. And the reason why is because that they can write anytime that they want. Anytime a thought comes into their head, they don't have to save it up for an appointment and remember it. So they can just write and tell me about their day and little snippets here and there. And the other part that they really like is once I respond, they have time to kind of reflect on our conversation before they write again. So the convenience is really nice for people because they can just do it on the go wherever they are. People write to me on the subway or on the airplane or wherever they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So people really like the ability to write whenever they want to, which is, I think, obviously a really, really huge selling point there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you keep demographics of for Talkspace on the whole of what sorts of people are using this?
Mm-hmm. Well, research shows that there's 3 main barriers to getting mental health services: cost, stigma, and access. So our demographics, we do keep basic demographics like gender and age range and things like that. But really, we're closely tracking the people that are coming to Talkspace and finding it because it's affordable, number one. Because of stigma. They don't feel comfortable going to therapy in person for whatever reason. And so they can be anonymous on the platform if they choose, and which helps people open up more quickly, actually, and they're more comfortable talking.
Right.
Or the access. They can do it, like we said, anywhere. They don't have to drive to an appointment or live in a big city or get childcare. They can just access it.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the interesting statistics is that 50% of our clients are new to therapy. So we're reaching a lot of people that have never had therapy before, which is really awesome. Yeah,
people who, I'm guessing for a lot of those people who thought that they could not get therapy or haven't got it because of those barriers you talked about.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's the. I actually did my doctoral dissertation on internet-based therapy.
Oh,
and my research was looking at who would be most interested, like who is most interested in doing either asynchronous or synchronous text-based therapy. And one of the groups that I really found that was a big fan of internet therapy were people that have previously been like burned by therapy, people who have had bad experiences with mental health services in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen a bit of that as well?
I have. So it's interesting because people will say that they've had a negative experience in the past. And so I'm always curious about what prompted them to try it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's true that we do see some people that are coming back and giving it another shot. So
it's interesting that it feels different, right? It's
mm-hmm.
essentially the same thing. Research shows that it's, the efficacy, how well it works is about the same as in-person therapy for a lot of different issues, but it has just a very different feel to people for some reason.
It does. I think it's because it's the way the world is going, right? This is the way people are communicating now with their friends and their family. It's also digital. And so it feels almost like just having a conversation.
Yeah. And people can be more real, right? There is that perceived, whether or not you said they can choose to be anonymous or not, right?
Right.
So whether or not they're choosing to be anonymous, there's less of a social threat of not having to sit there, do the full in-person therapy thing. They can just get the thoughts out before they have any of those internal struggles that would prevent them from doing so.
Right. There's no awkward silences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do in-person, obviously. Your background, you didn't start off in e-therapy. You've done traditional therapy as well. For you as a clinician, how is it different? You don't have those awkward silences, but you also don't have the nonverbal cues and different things like that. How's it different for you?
For me, it's been different that people open up so much more quickly. People will say things in writing that they won't say in person. So we really get down to the issue much more quickly is what I have found. And it's pretty cool. And the other thing is that people will write things and then they'll read it back and they'll refer back to it and they'll tell me how they refer back to it and they read it over and over what we talked about and how once they saw it in writing, it had a different feel for them. They had a different understanding of what they were going through, how therapeutic that was.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like a journal as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people a lot in therapy, I'm always trying to get people to keep journals, but it's difficult to get people to keep journals, but it's so useful because you get to externalize it and then read it back. Just like you said, it's like a feedback loop.
Right.
Huh. I haven't really thought about that. So that is really interesting.
Yeah.
So aside from the being able to kind of just jump straight into things, the anonymous nature, are there any other unique benefits that you found for Talkspace or online therapy in general?
For me, I find it to be so satisfying to be able to help people that normally couldn't get help. So like, for example, I have a client who's a mom with a new baby and she has postpartum depression. And like, here's somebody who can't leave the house right now to go to an appointment with her baby and being an infant. And so I love being able to talk to her every day and help her through what she's going through. And so that's really, really satisfying.
Such an amazing example. Somebody that would not, the problem itself is making it so that they would not necessarily go out and get help for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And someone who needs that help for sure.
Right. Huh. And another example is I have a lot of male clients, and so many more than I have in my face-to-face practice. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that this online therapy really lends itself to, is getting more men involved in therapy, because as you know, this country is still coming along, and the idea of it being acceptable for men to show emotion.
Sure.
So many are too ashamed to reach out for help when they need it. But I have a lot of men clients, and it's really rewarding to be with.
Same kind of thing. It kind of bypasses some of those stigmas or barriers or whatever the case may be. So you mentioned one thing that I wanted to follow up on. You mentioned, in this country we have a problem with people not being able to express themselves, especially men. Is this United States only for Talkspace, or is it international as well?
It's worldwide.
Okay. And I'm curious as a clinician how the whole licensure thing works. So typically for in-person therapy, people are licensed in the state that they practice. And a lot of people who do private online therapy also only work with people within the same state. Is there something like that going on for Talkspace, or how does that work?
Well, the therapists are all independent contractors. And so we work within the guidelines of our own state's licensing laws.
And does Talkspace, the company, leave it up to the the provider, the clinician to kind of figure that out and use their best judgment about?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of people who are listening to this probably they're not familiar with where we're at in the field with online therapy and the regulations, but it's really in flux. So people have different interpretations of what the laws are, where they're going to be soon. So I think that's probably wise to leave it up to the person who's giving that therapy. So what about internationally?
I don't know of any guidelines for that. I mean, I imagine it's the same for our state guidelines, address kind of anyone outside. It's basically, they phrase it as anyone outside the state that you live in.
Right.
So,
and for people who are coming, the people who are getting therapy that are from a different country, it's exactly the same for them. There's no difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's cool, because one other thing that I've encountered a lot talking to people is other countries have bigger barriers to mental health treatment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you had any experiences with that, or seen any secondhand experiences with that through Talkspace, people being able to get around that?
Sure. I mean, mostly it's around stigma, I would say, and access.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really like many people from other countries, just they can't talk, their customs are not to talk outside the family about personal problems or things like that. So they can't talk to their friends about things. And so they're getting therapy is really courageous and brave, because they're trying something that is really looked down on in their country.
Yeah, absolutely. One population that I can imagine might be really interested in Talkspace or any sort of internet therapy would be teens. Are people who are under 18 allowed to use this platform?
Not without parental consent.
And how does that work? So if a teenager thought that they could really use this and they wanted to, how would they go about doing the parental consent thing?
We would have to have proof that the parent consented and is paying for it, and that basically, we just have to have proof of that.
So do you have to have a call with the parent, or do they send documents? Do you have an idea of how that works?
I'm not sure, since I don't work with teens.
Maybe I'll look a bit into that as well, because I'm interested to know. I know that a lot of people would like to get that sort of treatment, but it's hard because they have barriers within their family. So there's some barriers, I guess, that you can't overcome regardless of the medium. But I think that if teens could get their parents to give the consent, then it might be easier for the parents to agree with than, I'm sending my kid to a shrink or something like that as well.
Right. And, the kids, I mean, it's a really good point, because teens, that's how they communicate these days is, all social media and texting. And so this could feel very natural for them.
Mm-hmm. So I was trying to put my mind kind of in the frame of somebody who's getting online therapy. And one thing that I would worry about as a client is that my therapist has multiple ongoing online therapy sessions. Mm-hmm. Is that like a legitimate worry?
You mean like that I would be too busy with other clients, or?
Yeah, that there'd be a lot of divided attention, that you would be, especially if it was, for instance, like a synchronous chat. So like instant messaging, if you set up a session for that, would you be having multiple windows of that open where you're having, 3 therapy sessions at once, or is it kind of?
I have not had that concern.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't thought about it that way, and I haven't had anybody ask me about that. It's funny, because when you're in the room and you're with the person and you're writing to them, I'm just so completely there that I'm spending my time in the room with them at that moment. And so part of, I think, being a good online therapist is being present and being able to communicate that virtually.
Mm-hmm. Do you get the same from the clients too? Like you don't get them maybe in a coffee shop, doing their texting there, and then they realize something else is going on and you just lose them?
I don't get that feeling, no.
Good.
I'm sure it happens, but I don't. Like sometimes, some clients will send like 10 short messages in a row or something, but it could be just like they're used to the writing and then pressing send and then writing and then pressing send. But I don't ever get the feeling that their attention is divided.
Mm-hmm. Good. It's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than regular therapy. How is that possible? And how much do you know off the top of your head how much it is for someone to get therapy through Talkspace?
Yes, it's $99 a month. We are a subscription model.
Mm-hmm.
And they can talk to their therapist as much as they want. And like I said, the therapist will come on and respond twice a day, 5 days a week. So we're able to keep that cost low because it is asynchronous.
Mm-hmm. So you're not paying for hours at a time. You're paying for basically minutes at a time or something like that.
Right.
And go ahead.
We consider 1 week of messaging therapy to be equal to 1 hour face-to-face session.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so on the clinician side, that's how you're compensated for it is basically 1 hour per week per client?
We get a percentage of the subscription fee.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for any therapists that are listening, is it a favorable percentage based on, the work that you're putting in and kind of the benefit of it?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. If you think about it, we're not having to have overhead. We're not having to go out and find our clients. Mm-hmm. They're coming right to us. And of course, the higher your caseload, the more you get paid. But there's all kinds of different ways to make money, doing this, and it's definitely a way to make a living. So. Okay.
Yeah. So are there a significant amount of people who do this exclusively or almost exclusively as their way of making a living?
Yes. Okay. There's a core group of us at Talkspace that do it full time.
Wow. So it's not necessarily like I keep mentally comparing it to Uber or one of these other apps, right? And it's really hard to make a living doing one of these sort of on-demand apps like Uber. So it is a bit different than that. So a lot of people, it sounds like, are actually taking that leap and doing it pretty much full time.
Yes. It's really nice because it's flexible. And so it offers therapists a way to supplement their face-to-face practice or just work part-time if they want, or full-time.
Yeah, no kidding. I can move to the Bahamas and do it from there, which is pretty attractive, I can imagine.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anyone that this is not for? Is there anybody that maybe should skip the online therapy and do in person?
We're not well suited for people that are like suicidal or in crisis where they need you right at that moment.
And how do you kind of screen for that or have that conversation early on? What does that look like?
We definitely screen for suicidal ideation. Mm-hmm. And as we're getting to know people, sometimes it isn't there and then it is. And so we help them manage that. We get a coping agreement. We refer them to the appropriate resources for people that can help in a crisis, and try and help them manage it that way.
Okay. And so what if somebody is anonymous, though, or they come on and they're anonymous and the suicidal ideation or, intent or something like that pops up? Mm-hmm. Are your hands kind of tied, or is there a way for you to kind of get emergency services involved or something like that?
Well, a couple of things. One, ultimately, we can probably find them.
Right, that they're paying, so.
Right. We can find it that way. But if I have a client that's really in crisis like that, like I work with a lot of domestic violence clients. And so sometimes, after our trust is developed, I'll ask them, do you mind sharing your address and your phone number with me so that I can reach you?
Okay.
If I can't, if I need to. And so if someone's suicidal, same kind of thing.
What I'm picking up here is that it's very much a platform and not Talkspace doesn't necessarily dictate how you do your own therapy, and you handle it in the way that you would for your own practice.
That's correct.
Okay. And what kind of quality control is there for the therapists? They're not all created equal, but how do you ensure that they're all good?
Well, one of the most amazing things about Talkspace, I think, is kind of the whole system they have in place for training, mentoring, and clinical consult. So when you start, you go into a 30-day training group, and so you're with a small group of people that is also in training, and you get to learn from each other, and you have a trainer who's going over modules with you each week.
What sort of things do they cover? Like what does the training involve? What are they teaching you to do?
Most of the training is about how to use the platform effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so people know how to find things and how to do things and what are the protocols. And we have a whole training set up for them about that. And then they go from there into a 4-month mentoring group. And so I run one of those, and that's 10 therapists are in there. And that's where we kind of get into doing online therapy. And so they have clients by then. And we do case consult, and we talk about different ways to handle things online, how that might be different from face-to-face or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this community for the therapist that's so supportive. And after they're done with their mentor group, then they go into a senior therapist group, and they stay there for the duration of time that they're with Talkspace. And then you've got 50 therapists and all these colleagues to talk to about cases and what you're going through. And if they need even more support, then they can always schedule sessions, one-on-one sessions with their former mentor or the clinical director.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's an incredible community, and I would say that's one of the huge benefits of working with them is it doesn't have the isolation that can come sometimes with being a therapist.
Right. Online or in-person therapists. A lot of in-person therapists open up a private practice, and it's basically an office somewhere, and they go there, they see a bunch of clients in the day, then they come home and go back, and that's it.
Right.
Without that sort of community, like you mentioned. Huh. Yeah. I guess I didn't really consider that could be a part of it because, like I said, I do online therapy, and, that's not the only thing that I do. I have plenty of community and stuff like that in my life and in my practice. But for somebody that was doing that exclusively, that would really be missing for sure.
Yes.
That's a really creative way to do it too. So the senior therapist group, after they've moved out of the training and initial mentorship, is that something that like they meet with every week, or is that kind of an ongoing, like a forum or something like that?
Yes, exactly.
Like the forum.
So people are kind of just constantly writing about things and
Gotcha.
Talking with each other there.
Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else that I haven't missed that I've missed here. I think this has been a pretty good picture. What's coming next? Do you have any idea of kind of where the field or Talkspace in particular is going? Is there any changes that might be happening?
Well, it's been such an incredible journey, and the company has just been growing and growing and growing. I mean, one thing that is kind of interesting is when the product was initially launched, it was for live sessions only. Mm. And that didn't work. And so we learned through that process that people didn't want to schedule an appointment. So that's then when we kind of pivoted and moved to messaging therapy. So now we've added the capability just last week. Now we can do live video. Before we were using Skype.
But now it's in the platform.
Yeah, it's in the platform. So we're kind of constantly working on improving that experience for the clinicians and for the clients, mm-hmm. And creating all these different cool ways to communicate with each other. So we have a lot in the works for that. And now we have, I was thinking about where it's going. I mean, it's just kind of exploding. It used to be very difficult to recruit clinicians, and now we just have hundreds of applications a month. Mm-hmm. So I think I see it continuing to grow and evolve and get more and more accepted out there in the world. People are warming up to the idea. When I first started doing it, people were like, I don't know, pretty skeptical.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of becoming a way of life.
Absolutely. So. Is there a screening? So you said that people apply all the time to become therapists. Uh-huh. Is it difficult to become a therapist for Talkspace, or what is the screening process for that like?
Well, they initially talked to our HR director, who's also a therapist, and she screens them. And then they have, through the training process, they get 2 clients, and so someone's overseeing their rooms. Mm. And so they're maintaining the QA and seeing how they conduct therapy. And so I would say, I think the number is about 80 out of the 100 we, I think, are recruiting 100 a month, and 80 of them stay.
Okay.
So,
what are the main things that would cause somebody to not stay right now?
Not answering clients.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Not being responsive, not being, or like being judgmental or critical or blaming, or, kind of not open and warm and accepting,
Right.
any kind of discrimination language, any kind of, just bad therapy. I think that's damaging to people, or upsetting, or bad reviews. Everybody gets bad reviews, I guess, but
Sure. Sure.
But complaints to customer service.
But it sounds like this is. I'm really impressed by how much the clinical side is baked into the platform.
Yes.
It's not. It's not this organization or this company that decided to make this platform and then it's like laissez-faire from there and people do whatever they want. There's a lot of clinical intelligence baked into it at these different levels. So it sounds like the people who get screened out, that's by somebody who has good clinical judgment, and they could say that this is probably not a good fit for the clients that we're going to get.
Yes, that's right. The founders are passionate about that, the clinical side of it. And in fact, we have an advisory panel that's made up of 8 therapists. And we advise, we work very closely with the business when they're talking about what they're going to release on the product, on the platform. We talk about how that's going to affect the clinical relationship, and make sure that it meets the highest standards.
Wow, very cool. The last thing I really wanted to just technically understand is privacy wise, there's only so much you can do in terms of if somebody's in public, you can see, if they're not on a secure connection, or people can look over their shoulder and things like that. But on the Talkspace side, what is done to ensure the patient's privacy?
I don't know the answer to that technically.
Sure. Not like what type of encryption or whatever.
Right. I don't know the type of encryption, but I know that there's very, very rigid standards that they uphold themselves to keep the platform secure.
Okay. It's people, the unfortunate gold standard, and, I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of this, is using Skype, like you said, how you started. And Skype is kind of fundamentally not the most secure. So you kind of have to know that going in. Is this, was the platform intended to be more secure than that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's more secure than it meets HIPAA standards.
Oh, okay. And for people who don't know what that is, that's the healthcare private information, basically how private healthcare information is allowed to be transmitted or not, to make sure that patients are staying safe and that their information is private when it should be.
Right.
Well, awesome. I really, really appreciate you talking to me. Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience listening, or any last, things that you want to talk about before we head out?
I don't think so, other than, tell your friends that it's out there, it's available. We want to make sure people know about it so that they get help when they need it. So.
And are you online anywhere for people to, see you or your projects or anything personally?
Sure. I'm at www.shannonmcfarlin.com.
And that's McFarlin.
Yes, thank you. It's an unusual spelling.
No, it's pretty usual, but people can put all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. It was insightful for me. I learned a bit about it, and really encouraging, I think. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Robert.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was the interview. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. It was very interesting and enlightening for me. And I'm somebody who's in the field already, so I definitely learned a few things. I hope that you did too. I did want to clarify one point. Shannon didn't quite know whether teens could take part in Talkspace or not. I didn't get an official ruling, so to speak, from anyone that worked there, but on their FAQ on the website, it says that minors are not allowed. So I'm not entirely sure if minors are or are not allowed, even with parental permission. So if you're a minor and you're interested, that's something that I would probably contact their support about. I'm not entirely sure. It is possible in general for minors to get psychotherapeutic treatment with or without parental consent, depending on their age and the state and everything like that. So it's just something to look into if that's something that you are interested in. But yeah, so totally great interview. Thank you for listening. And like I said, next week is a question and answer episode. So please send me your questions at Duff the Psych on Twitter or duffthepsych@gmail.com, and I will see you for that one. Bye.